ultimately, I think in both cases, the government attempts to stop cryptocurrencies and precious metals are going to be futile for different reasons.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. We got a returning guest on the line, the very popular Andy Hoffman with the trusted Miles Franklin. He's a precious metals expert, as well as someone who has come around in a large way into the cryptocurrency space, and now probably the biggest advocate in the gold community supporting Bitcoin. As a matter of fact, you can even purchase now your precious metals at Miles Franklin with Bitcoin. Monumental developments. Andy Hoffman, thanks for coming on the line with me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here as always, and I think it's great that your channel has focused not just on your traditional stuff like I have, but moved on to things like cryptocurrency, because it's the wave of the future. It's the money of the future. When we talk about storage of value, precious metals is going to continue to do what it's done for thousands of years. But when we're talking about the new paradigm that's going to change the world, it's going to be the disintermediation of government from the monetary system, as they've done more destruction via fiat money than pretty much any man-made thing we've seen in history. And as a result, I believe, yes, that Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are going to change the world.
Sure. You know, Andy, I would imagine Bitcoin didn't just creep up on you and you accepted it immediately, you know, such as myself. I was a big skeptic at first. I'm curious, how did you come around to Bitcoin, and how is it working in relation to gold and silver? I know you touched on that just now a little bit, but please expand on that if you would.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember having an interview with your brother at a conference in San Diego back in, 2012 or so, where he interviewed me asking me about it because it was going up. And my opinion was it's too early for me to understand it, but I'm very skeptical. But then I had this innate, as a monetary expert, an innate interest, and so I even had a Bitcoin in Mt. Gox because I don't know, for whatever reason I was there, and after that crashed, I still followed it on a daily basis for years, until finally at the end of 2015 I decided that there was something real. I watched it develop. I watched its use cases develop and its stability develop, and I understood the hacks and that had nothing to do with Bitcoin but the exchanges, and that's when I started investing heavily, and I started writing about it about a year ago. I wrote Bitcoin and Precious Metals, Twin Destroyers of the Fiat Regime, back in May of 2016, and as the years progressed, I've taken a very big position, and as you said, I would say I'm easily the biggest advocate of cryptocurrency in the precious metal space. I mean, there are others like yourselves, like Bix Weir, like Jeff Berwick, but they are not actually in the bullion industry. And excuse me, what I found is that the biggest skeptics in the industry of cryptocurrency have come from precious metals, just like a lot of the biggest skeptics of precious metals have come from cryptocurrency. And what I've tried to do is bridge that gap and show people that these assets are fighting the same battle against the same fiat regime, and while they may have slightly different use cases, they are definitely going to move together. And in many ways, I think cryptocurrency is going to help precious metals because it's going to take a lot of the government's manipulative efforts away from precious metals into what they ultimately deem the greater monetary threat.
I totally agree, Andy. And I'm curious, what sort of feedback are you getting from the community? Obviously, a lot of the gold and silver guys are taking a long time. They're some of the biggest skeptics of Bitcoin. They don't understand that. How can something have value if it's just some sort of digital file, a digital ledger? Where's the true value as opposed to gold, which goes back 5,000 years or thousands of years, and digital currency has been around since, 2009? Where's the history behind this? And, what's some of the feedback you're getting?
Well, I spent in prior life, I was an energy analyst on Wall Street for a decade. and also mining. I worked in the mining industry for 5 years, and both of those industries are ones where I don't have knowledge. I can go to all the rigs I want and all the mine sites I want, but I'm still never going to truly understand geology, engineering, and all the things that go into it. So at some point you have to trust based on the knowledge accumulated from working with very smart people in the field. And the same goes with cryptocurrency. You can just say blindly, well, it's just a blip on the screen. But once you understand what's behind it, and you realize, and you follow the smart people in the industry, you realize that it is scarce. It has all of the properties that money has always had, except it also is it's private, and it can be sent around the internet, and it's essentially regulation free because the government can't get in the middle of it. And so when I understood that, I was able to move forward on a personal basis. And what I found is that the vast majority of the people in the precious metal community will continue to cling to kind of the myths about cryptocurrency in the same way that much of the mainstream continues to cling to myths about precious metals. And so, you really need to be open-minded about all these things, or else you're going to hurt yourself financially in the big picture. Because as far as I know, no one in the precious metal space wants to even acknowledge it, when in fact it's the greatest ally that precious metals, especially against this cartel, have ever had.
Wow. And that's interesting. I was going to ask you about what we're seeing right now with precious metals and the cartel's relentless attack against it. And I'm wondering, is Bitcoin outside of the cartel's power, in your opinion? I know it's easy to say it is, but I'm wondering if there's anything they can do, or you foresee anything happening where they kind of get their grips on it and they're able to control it the way they've done here with gold and silver.
Well, they'll certainly try, and they have tried thus far. For instance, like what the Chinese government did in regulating they made capital controls to the point that when Bitcoin had its first big surge at the end of last year and it went to $1,100, the Chinese government came in and said you can no longer withdraw Bitcoin from Chinese exchanges. And here we are 4 months later, the price has doubled, and you still can't withdraw Bitcoin from Chinese exchanges. In fact, the prices are about 30% less there as a result. So they may think that they can do that, but it's kind of like diminishing returns. Every time the governments announce that they're going to try to stop it in some way, shape, or form, the effect is more limited. And the fact is that the Chinese people, for instance, can now buy Bitcoin. They realize, well, we'll just buy it at local Bitcoins, or we'll buy it at a foreign exchange, or there's so many different ways of doing it. And so eventually, the governments will see Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies as an existential threat, and they'll do things. I mean, you can guarantee it. They will shut down Coinbase. They will, they can say it's illegal to use. The problem is, how do you stop it? It's hard enough to stop gold and silver from being used because there's a black market. Like in India, there's a tremendous black market, and if they ever tried to stop the use here, it would just cause the price to skyrocket because it's a global market. But the fact is that any efforts that they make to try to slow it down will be futile. I've been saying with cryptocurrency, it's going to be like Don Quixote flailing at windmills, because the fact that it's so decentralized that people can it's only going to make it more valuable, and people will. It's not that difficult to buy Bitcoins, and you don't need an exchange. In fact, we've been talking forever about precious metals. That ultimately these exchanges are going to blow themselves up. The exchanges are the government tools for keeping the price down, and ultimately when there's physical shortages, the exchanges will be discredited, and people will be buying outside the exchanges. In the case of cryptocurrencies, the exchanges are not the government. The exchanges are the primary private way of buying cryptocurrency. The problem is the government is going to try to stop that, and it's going to force all the activity outside of the exchanges. So ultimately, I think in both cases, the government attempts to stop cryptocurrencies and precious metals are going to be futile for different reasons.
Andy, a lot of people that have been frustrated with gold and silver, they got their release, let's just call it, with Bitcoin, seeing it go up, the sound money principle, this money that's limited supply. And really the game plan is playing out for Bitcoin, but people are very frustrated with gold and silver because of the cartel and just because it hasn't played out to the degree yet that we are seeing Bitcoin do in the same time. What we're seeing with Bitcoin is not happening with gold at the moment. And I'm just wondering, what are your sentiments towards gold and silver at the moment versus Bitcoin?
Oh, absolutely, and that's why you're seeing a lot of the skepticism, because a lot of the precious metal community is angry, as I was way back in the beginning when people were seeing, Bitcoin's going up, and saying, well, it's replacing gold, and it's not replacing gold. It's a completely different use case. In fact, as I said, it's complementary to gold, and I've written why Bitcoin will make gold and silver go up and twin destroyers. So I think they're working together. So yes, it has hurt. It has made a lot of people angry because they watch the cartel hold prices down. My sentiment though with gold and silver is it's no different. Look, what we're seeing right now is unprecedented. It's not even just in gold and silver. I mean, we've never seen efforts like this, an all-time high silver short position without any real crisis. And the reason being that they need exponentially larger amounts of paper shorting to keep the price from exploding. At the same time, you have the record low volatility in the stock markets, which go up every day, no matter how bad the news is, because the PPT has to be in there every second of the day. And now the oil PPT is in there jawboning every day. And of course, we have record low bond yields around the world because of the QE and the NERP and the ZERP. So it's gotten to the point where everyone in the mainstream markets is frustrated that reality is not playing out. While, of course, in cryptocurrencies, it is partly because of the exponential growth from a small base, and partly because, as you said, the monetary regime is starting to be, the future of a new monetary regime is starting to be seen in this tiny cryptocurrency space, although it's not as tiny as it once was. Now the market cap is probably about $50 billion total. So I think for me, from precious metal space, I'm just long and strong and just holding my position, waiting, knowing that with each passing day, the physical fundamentals, such as the now plummeting physical production from the mines, the rising physical demand from around the world as currencies serially decline, and my knowledge from years of study that the inventories that are behind the scenes that have been, disported to keep prices down are probably down to fumes by now. So I just sit there and wait, knowing that time is on my side in the fundamentals, and know that at some point, coincident, not with all these other things falling apart of the powers that be, precious metals will be liberated, and they will be the stores of value they have always been. In the case of cryptocurrency, though, it's a completely different ballgame because I've long said, I wrote "Is Gold Money? Who Cares?" back in 2014, and basically I said back then that I knew there would never be a gold standard because governments destroy gold-backed currencies just like they destroy fiat currencies for the same reasons: fraud and greed. And in the case of gold, they dishoard it, they encumber it, they clip coins, whatever. The point is, there's not going to be a gold standard. There's not going to be an SDR. The future of money will be decentralized, in which the people take the power and the governments are never again trusted to print money. And that's why you're going to see cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin be the future of utilitarian day-to-day money. And I think that it's going to be a powerful trend that sweeps the world in a very short amount of time, as in a few years' time, you're going to see, just a sea change in the zeitgeist, in the understanding and the belief in fiat currency. And while this is going on and the governments are fighting to the death, like Don Quixote, to fight against these cryptocurrencies, which are decentralized, they're going to lose track, or they're going to lose the ability to hold gold and silver down. And they will go up, not necessarily as monetary assets, just as the stores of value they ever had. And there will be a dramatic surge in price. And maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next year. But it will be completely independent of what's going on in the cryptocurrency space, which is changing the world.
Andy, it's interesting because Bitcoin right now, and as it started, was an alternative to money. Really, a lot of people that were into it were libertarians, people in the know, follow the system and question it. And I know that's changing to a large degree, but I think it's interesting because it's going to have to break the mainstream in certain ways. And I think it will through a lot of the things that you're talking about right now. But as I think about it, Bitcoin seems like it would be very interesting to guys like, tech guys like Elon Musk and some of these big liberals out there. But at the same time, it's going to have that, they're going to question it because I think it's going to have that stigma of, libertarian, alt-right sort of paradigm surrounding it. And I'm just wondering, is it just going to have to prove itself like it's doing to really penetrate the market and to break through this mainstream conventional thinking?
Yeah, well, look, it is proving itself. Look, Bitcoin's only been around for 9 years, and these altcoins haven't been around at all. In fact, 99% of them don't even have a use case yet. It's kind of like the dot-com era where a lot of companies just say we're going to do something, but they haven't actually done anything. But what's going on right now, it's a mainstream world that has to be broken of a paradigm that's been going on for decades right now, and it's skeptical of doing it. And of course, the people who are in charge of it will lose their power if that occurs. So they're going to fight it just the way they fight gold, with propaganda and every means possible to try to delay the inevitable. And in the case of Bitcoin, unlike gold, there's a fear based on the unknown. Whereas the bankers, they know very well all the issues with gold. They don't understand cryptocurrency, so they're going to be even more desperate and more kind of stupid about how they go about things. But the way that it's going to catch on is going to be, one, the use just continues, the blockchain continues to be successful, and also the alternatives in the mainstream world continue to fail at a rapidly increasing rate. So I have no doubt that there's going to be widespread change of view as people start to realize that Bitcoin works and that fiat currency doesn't work. And again, sitting in the background is gold and silver, which doesn't work or not work. It just is. And once people realize that it's in shortage and that its use case is no different today than it was 5,000 years ago, and probably what its use case will be 5,000 years from now, it too will join the party. But as far as I'm concerned, there's a lot of growing up that has to go on in the cryptocurrency space. Bitcoin is miles ahead of everyone else in terms of use case, in terms of history, and it still has tons of its own hurdles to get through, like the scaling debate, which will get done. And I think that given the pace of technological change and just the changes of mindset around the world about all the things that are wrong with the world and all the people that want to change, I think it's going to be a lot more rapid than you say, than we're suggesting. And then when you talk about people like Elon Musk, I mean, look, anyone who's anyone in the technological world is watching this. All the major companies, even the major banks, have their eye on this because they know that there's something there, and some of them view it as a threat, and some of them view it as a speculation. And some of them actually see it like we do, as changing the world. But the fact is, it will change the world, and it's really only a matter of how fast it does so.
Well, I love the way you worded this in one of your write-ups, and speaking about the fiat Ponzi scheme, and you were talking about it serially crashing, a trend that must accelerate in the coming years as history's largest, most destructive fiat Ponzi scheme races through its malignant terminal phase. And right now, every time I look around, I'm just seeing a bubble and home prices year after year. Now, 2017, I look at California, I look at Texas, just some different states here, and we're seeing prices continue to rise. And I'd like you to, compare this, if you would, or let us know what your thoughts are of this bubble, because does this feel like what led us to the '08 crisis, or and how does this end? And I guess in regards to real estate, the argument out there is that because of the '08 crisis, there's a limited inventory because so much construction stopped. And that's what's sustaining prices at these, record high prices, in addition to interest rates. But also the inventory side, there's just a supply shortage of houses out there. I don't know, any thoughts on that? I know I said a lot right there.
Well, look, what we're seeing now, I've been reluctant to call it a bubble because it's been not public participation. It's all been the government printing money and buying up financial markets. I mean, the Swiss and the Japanese actually admit that they've been buying up the stock markets, and we know that our PPT has been doing so covertly. And of course, all the monetization of bonds. I mean, right now they talk about, the Fed is not doing anything. Right now, there's $250 billion a month of QE going on in the world, and that's an all-time high. And so you put all that together, all the advanced manipulation methods, the HFT algorithms, derivatives. It's gotten to the point where 99% of this quote bubble is simply the government printing money and buying things, as opposed to public participation. However, of course, in the end stages of it, people have finally had some kind of wealth effect from it, or at least a FOMO, fear of missing out. And so now we are seeing, I was just writing yesterday about all the shoddy practices and speculations going on in a lot of these fraudy real estate markets. Not all real estate markets, by the way. A lot of them are the ones where people are want to move to, like Texas and Colorado and places like that. But we are definitely seeing, as I wrote in a podcast the other day, .com-like valuations in a Great Depression era. So, we're talking about .com valuations from the top of the peak in 1999, or the top of the real estate peak in 2007, except this is the worst economy of our lifetimes. I mean, we're at zero GDP, no matter how you measure it. And pretty much look, Ford just announced last night they're laying off 10% of their entire global workforce. Record inventories, record subprime auto delinquencies, and plunging sales, and now commodities are falling again. And look, no matter how you slice it, this is a recession / depression. In many places, it's a lot worse. And when we finally have some kind of crisis, when BPT or the cartel or whatever loses some kind of control and there's any kind of financial fear, either the Fed is going to do QE4, and we're going to see an all-out panic like nothing before, and there's going to be no real backstop, because pretty much the central banks have done all they can do from a credibility and a balance sheet standpoint. So I do wholeheartedly believe that whatever you want to call this, a bubble or a government created monstrosity, it's going to be, in real terms, the biggest crash in history, and it's going to end up with currencies decimated as if they aren't already. I mean, the average currency has lost half its purchasing power just since the 2008 crisis. And there's going to be a flood of people into safe haven assets, only this time around, it's not just going to be gold and silver. It's going to be the understanding that there's going to be a new monetary regime that has nothing to do with the destruction of governments, of central banks, and it's going to be cryptocurrency. Wow.
Powerful words right there. I was going to ask you for some closing thoughts here, and to let everyone know about, Miles Franklin and obviously the new developments. Those are great closing thoughts right there, Andy. I just wanted to let you know that I greatly appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your knowledge with us and your expertise, and really your take on Bitcoin as well in this unique talk we had. We have never talked about Bitcoin in the past together, so I appreciate that. So any closing words of advice for everyone, and also let everyone know about the new developments?
Right, and again, I have to congratulate yourself, the Crush the Street, the Future Money Trends on your forward thinking. I think it's going to help your readers a great deal, as well, as we focus not just on precious metals, but cryptocurrencies, as I call them, the twin destroyers of the fiat regime. And as for Miles Franklin, yes, we're in the early stages of accepting Bitcoin for precious metals, although as we're learning very quickly, the government's crazy anti-money laundering, know your client rules are making it very difficult to do that in scale. That'll come in time, but right now we're working as hard as we can to do it in small scale. And again, Miles Franklin, Precious Metals, we have been around 28 years without a single registered complaint. You can call us at 800-822-8080 or register for online investing. Or you can email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
Thanks, Andy. Appreciate it.
And thank you, Ken.